Welcome to today's Explainer. We're taking a real deep dive into something I find absolutely fascinating: the archetypal evolution of video game moms. For the longest time, maternal figures in gaming were kind of just shoved into the background. They were simple stereotypes or, honestly, just complete afterthoughts. But over the years, wow, we've witnessed this incredible transformation. They've evolved into these deeply complex, multi-dimensional narrative drivers that literally shape the entire stories we play and love. So, let's just jump right in.
Now, to ground our discussion, we're looking at a really comprehensive study from the International Journal for Multidisciplinary Research, or the IJFMR. This research breaks down how female representation in gaming has shifted historically. We've gone from these completely one-dimensional tropes, think the classic damsel in distress, to emotionally rich, incredibly complex characters who possess actual true agency. And getting a handle on this academic context is absolutely crucial to really appreciating just how far the whole concept of the gaming mom has come.
Okay, let's map out our journey. We're going to start with the overall evolution of gaming moms, and then look at our first group, caretakers, who nurture growth. From there, we dive into trauma and the anti-villain, with a specific focus on Freya's story of love and vengeance. Then we hit the warriors, looking at duty and sacrifice before wrapping the whole thing up with the legacy of maternal figures. Section 1. Evolution of gaming moms, from tropes to truths.
Moving right into Section 2, caretakers, nurturing positive growth.
Like the research showed, early gaming moms were pretty narrow archetypes, but today, their deeply held beliefs and actions hugely influence a main protagonist's character development. We see this right off the bat with the caretaker archetype. These are those wonderfully familiar figures who give us a positive anchor. Let's look at Toriel from Undertale. She's the isolated ex-wife of Asgore, but to you, the player, she becomes fiercely protective. She acts as a surrogate mother who gives you a safe haven, literally bakes you pies, and holds your hand through the early puzzles. She makes our list because her maternal kindness fundamentally sets the entire moral tone for the game. Then you've got Ness's mom from Earthbound. She's your classic suburban mom raising her kids while her husband is away, and she acts as an absolute pillar of support for Ness. She cooks his favorite meals, lets him rest, and she stands out because her care is actually tied to a core gameplay mechanic. If Ness doesn't call her, he gets homesick and his battle performance drops. So she positively impacts his journey in a very literal, tangible way.
Another fantastic caretaker, and one who provides a deeply realistic anchor, is Joyce from Life is Strange. Her backstory is rooted in immense tragedy. She lost her husband, William, and this loss severely strains her relationship with her daughter, Chloe. Chloe struggles with some really deep grief and behavioral problems, but despite this constant heavy friction between them, Joyce is out there working tirelessly at the local diner, and she absolutely refuses to give up on her family. Her undying love and just sheer willpower to care for Chloe make her a really remarkable example of a mother offering emotional support in the middle of a chaotic world.
So, game design today brilliantly illustrates the massive spectrum of motherhood. On one side, you've got this profound positive impact, the healing, the emotional support, the safe havens we just talked about with the caretakers. But, if we flip that coin, we see the negative impact. We're talking destructive manipulation, abuse, and some really deep psychological scarring. And that stark juxtaposition perfectly sets the stage for our next archetype. Which brings us to Section 3, Villains, Trauma, and the Anti-Villain. All right, descending into the darker psychology of gaming moms, we see how corrupted ideals and unhealed grief create some truly haunting adversaries. First up is Dahlia Gillespie from Silent Hill. She is driven entirely by fanatical religious cult beliefs, and her relationship with her daughter Alessa is, well, horrific. She actively abuses and literally sacrifices her own child just to birth a dark god. It makes her the ultimate example of a destructive, abusive mother. And then we have Queen Brane from Final Fantasy IX. Her backstory is defined by the sudden death of her husband, which just completely breaks her. As a result, her relationship with her adopted daughter, Princess Garnet, totally deteriorates as Brane descends into black magic. She ends up waging massive, destructive wars using magical summons. It perfectly illustrates how a mother's unhealed grief can morph into world-ending tyranny. But, sometimes villainy is forged entirely by external abuse. Take the intense tragedy of Alma Wade from the Fear series. As a child, Alma was subjected to horrific corporate experiments designed to harness her psychic powers. Her very relationship to motherhood is deeply traumatic. It's the result of forced pregnancies by those exact same corporations. So, in response, she unleashes a terrifying psychic bloodbath. She makes this list not as a one-dimensional evil monster, but as a profoundly hostile anti-villain shaped completely by the trauma inflicted upon her. It's an incredibly dark yet fascinating look at psychological character building.
And that leads right into Section 4, Freya, Love and Vengeance.
This whole dynamic of trauma really builds into one of the most layered characters in modern gaming, who is shaped not by malice but by dangerously overprotective love. Let's walk through Freya's tragic timeline in God of War. First, as a leader of the Vanir, she marries Odin to secure peace, but that marriage becomes deeply toxic. Second, after her son Baldur is born, runes foretell his needless death. Driven by this desperate, overprotective love, she casts an immortality spell on him. But it completely backfires. It makes Baldur physically numb to all sensation. This totally destroys their relationship, turning his love into pure hatred for her. Third, her marriage completely shatters, and Odin banishes her to Midgard, stripping her of her Valkyrie wings. And finally, when Kratos is forced to kill Baldur to stop him from murdering Freya, her maternal trauma reaches a boiling point, and she swears absolute, blood-soaked vengeance against Kratos.
Freya perfectly embodies that academic shift we discussed earlier from the IGFMR study, the move toward emotionally layered complex protagonists. She isn't just some trope. Her grief, her mistakes, and her maternal desperation are the engines that literally drive the narrative forward. Because she operates entirely as an agent of her own autonomy, she stands out as one of the most compelling characters in the entire franchise.
Moving on to Section 5, Warriors, Duty, and Sacrifice.
Here we delve into the profound moral ambiguity of mothers who have to navigate this excruciating balance between deep maternal love and the harsh demands of duty. And there is absolutely no better example of this than the boss from Metal Gear Solid 3. She's a legendary American soldier, literally known as the mother of the U.S. Special Forces. But she occupies this incredibly complex dual role. On one hand, she's the biological mother to Revolver Ocelot. She actually gave birth to him on the battlefield. On the other hand, she's the mentor and surrogate mother figure to the game's protagonist, Naked Snake. Her actions in the game are shocking. She seemingly defects to the Soviet Union, which forces Snake to hunt her down. She represents the absolute pinnacle of maternal sacrifice and duty.
The crucial point of her character is captured perfectly in this quote from the game. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. The really heartbreaking moral ambiguity of the boss is that her defection was actually a staged U.S. government ruse. To avoid a global nuclear war, she was ordered to take the fall. She allowed herself to be killed by her beloved surrogate son Snake and chose to go down in history as a traitor. All of this just to protect her country and her child. It is a staggering narrative achievement. Which brings us to our final part. Section 6, Legacy of Maternal Figures. As we look at the legacy of all these maternal figures, we can clearly see that these archetypal evolutions demonstrate a massive shift. Mothers in gaming are no longer just background characters waving goodbye from the porch, right? They heal, they destroy, they sacrifice, and they fundamentally shape the destiny of the heroes we play. Now, why does this matter to us? It matters because this evolution represents a broader shift toward what academics call representational realism. We're finally moving past those hypersexualized one-dimensional figures. Today, female characters possess true agency, immense vulnerability, and deeply human moral ambiguity, making the games we play so much richer and infinitely more engaging. So I want to leave you with a provocative question to ponder. As interactive storytelling becomes even more advanced, how will the next generation of games continue to innovate and further subvert our expectations of motherhood? Are we going to see even more complex archetypes emerge? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.